One.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Saturday, February 1st, 2025 special meeting of the Berkeley Police Accountability Board. Public notice to access the meeting remotely, join from a PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or Android device using this URL below in the agenda. If you do not wish for your name to appear on the screen, use the drop-down menu and click on rename to rename yourself to be anonymous. To request to speak, use the raise hand icon on the screen. To join by phone, dial 1-669-900-6833 and enter meeting ID 826-2690-8879. If you wish to comment during the public comment portion of the agenda, press *9 and wait to be recognized. Land acknowledgement. The city of Berkeley recognizes that the community we live in was built on the territory of the Huichin Bank, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chicano-speaking Ohlone people, the ancestors and descendants of the Sovereign Brahmin Band of Alameda County. This land was and continues to be of great importance to all of the Ohlone tribe and descendants of the Brahmin Band. As we begin our meeting this afternoon, we acknowledge and honor the original inhabitants of Berkeley, the documented 5,000-year history of the vibrant community at the West Berkeley Shaolin, the Ohlone people who continue to reside in the East Bay. We recognize that Berkeley's residents have and continue to benefit from the use and occupation of this unceded stolen land since the city of Berkeley's incorporation in 1878. As stewards of the laws regulating the city of Berkeley, it is not only vital that we recognize the history of this land, but also recognize that the Ohlone people are present members of Berkeley and other East Bay communities today. With agenda, and now we turn to our agenda. First up is the call to order and roll call.
All right, thank you, Chair. I'll now proceed with roll call. Chair Cayetano.
Here.
Vice Chair Wilson. Board Member Calavita is absent. Board Member Leftwich.
Here.
Board Member Moore is absent. Board Member Moses, absent. Board Member Williams.
Here.
All right, Chair Cayetano, we have a quorum.
The agenda. Any revisions? Hearing no objections, we'll move along.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Cayetano, and I'll proceed with public comment. At this time, we do not have any physically present speakers, and I don't see any virtual attendees.
All right, next up is I'll say introduction and then take it out the board member. Thank you everyone for being here. We did planning session. I'm hoping that we have a projected one, just like our one this year. Where we were able to come away with some strategic reformations to our procedures. And hopefully we can take a look at our 2024 successes and 2024 this one. Board member Leftwich, turn it to you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so the goal of this session is basically to look backward and then look forward. Gives us a chance away from the question we're using the business to be a little introspective about our work. I will try to keep us on time. We're already a little behind, but I'll try to keep us on time. And I think it's time just to switch to the first portion of the agenda, which is the year in review. And I think Board Member Cayetano, you just take that section to lead.
Sure. So for this agenda item, we're going to look at talk about our accomplishments and strengths in 2024, and then after that we'll turn to our challenges and what we felt short. So I'll open it up to the rest of you first to maybe identify some of the things that we think that the board did well in 2024, whether that be improvements that we carry through with from our 2024 meeting, or anything else that we feel was doing well, that we should continue to do so in 2025. There are only 4, so.
Well, I would say, no, go ahead.
Well, as being the newest board member, obviously everything has been a combination of a learning experience and well as, doing my due diligence and doing my duties as a board member. So going off of the previous 6 months, I think that the board has done a relatively good job at maintaining focus and staying on task. And with that being said, I'm excited about the new changes that are happening. I'm interested to see how the change in leadership affects our meeting, not only our meetings, but our strategic, et cetera, so I'll just start there.
Yeah, I think we work hard and I appreciate that, but the board is comprised of people who are dedicated and hard workers, and I think we've made a lot of progress policy front, even though it's been difficult. I think we've done a good job in that area.
I think that we work well together. That we have a better understanding than at this juncture last year of what our work is and are mindful of that. I also think we've made some significant progress on the policy front, but also on the sort of understanding what our rights are as a board and exercising those and having some recognition of those rights. So I think we've had plenty of successes.
I know that for Vice Chair Wilson, you were involved in the budget process in 2024 at the beginning of the year. Do you have anything that was stood out as successful in the process that?
No.
Okay, we'll say that for another agenda. So I think that also like, well, let me turn to the director's office if you want to get in on this little item, things that we didn't do well before after.
I think you guys should commend yourselves, because I think, just in reflection of my time here, there's been a lot of changes that the city's experiencing with it. I'm just like taking stock, like, we have a new city manager, we lost our 2 deputy city managers, our HR director just announced he's leaving. So in the city council members, the composition has changed. So there's a lot going on in the city globally, and you are continuing to navigate, and even like the budget, inserting yourselves and exercising your right to participate in that process. I know you were hesitant to make commentary right now, but I think that's a very important discussion to be part of, because when we talk about these lasting changes, it's being able to scrutinize how money's being spent and being able to do these different things that the charter wants you to do. So I think it's important to contextualize the broader landscape that you're navigating under, because it's not favorable, because so many things has happened all at once.
I think that one thing that I was grateful for this last year, for Thanksgiving, is that we had clarity on our subpoena power, and that we actually issued a subpoena to enforce our rights under the charter as vice chair. I think that was a big step forward, because I remember when I started in 2023, that was an open question, and I'm grateful that we resolved that, at least for now. I think that we made major steps on the policy front, especially with the early intervention system. I think that, identifying that gap in what city council had asked of us being both the department and the board, and what was the reality, and then filling that, or creating a work plan to fill that gap and bring it to, to actual policy and to actually implement procedure has been a lot of work. We should be proud of that. I also think that we've been fulfilling our duties in the charter to, make findings on complaints. And that we haven't really had a gap in that process, and we've been doing the work, so I think that those three things have been really important, from my perspective last year.
One more thing
Yeah.
that occurred to me, and that's, I think we have an improved relationship with the police department. And I think we got off to a bit of a rocky start, but I feel like things have improved over the last year. We're working more collaboratively with you.
Yeah, and kind of the structure of our charter requires us to work collaboratively with the department policy, or else we don't really get anywhere. That part of that was formed at the Maple conference last year, where we had members from BPD and PAB and the director's office come.
The conference in Arizona.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which will, I guess, like lean forward into, or like foreshadow some thoughts that I have on, attendance this year, but that's sort of like, I thought that was a very strong in 2024. Any other thoughts before on these chat? I feel like we're really eager to talk about challenges, like no other thoughts? Okay, so now we can talk about our challenges and where we fell short. I think that title is self-explanatory. Happy to open it up again.
Well, I think obviously for me is finding an efficient timeline to have a realistic expectation to complete my subcommittee duties. That's a challenge for me. Working in tandem with someone else can be an advantage. It should be an advantage because it should help lighten the load, but sometimes, schedules can be conflicting. And so that's a personal challenge. Where I feel like maybe, I could do a better job regardless of any outside things going on.
Can you remember which subcommittee you?
Policy 1010 and 1034, so department policy
Were you working on that
with a chip.
Okay,
A chip, yeah.
and
So it's pretty big.
okay. Yeah. About what can make that efficient, because
Yeah,
part of the goal of the session is to come away with like actual strategic steps to,
yeah,
make our work more efficient. I think that might be part of it, is looking at our subcommittees like we did last year, right? And figuring out what can be, how the work can be allocated better. We don't have
Yeah, I'm just gonna say it's consistent with what I would say. Biggest challenges, it's not as credit to anybody, it's just the workload. And I think there's been a real reluctance to not do things, and somehow there's a view that if we don't take on something, it means we don't think it's important. And I think we need to kind of move away from that and just be more realistic about what we can do, so that we're responsive. I also think a challenge and something I, really hope we can focus on this year is the lack of engagement, public engagement with the work of our board. And I've been, really pushing for communication strategy, social media strategy in particular. I think that's very important. So there's a couple of things that kind of.
I would echo all your thoughts that were conveyed so far about kind of our reluctance to say no to things. And it's a challenge to prioritize our work. I think there's a challenge on our board with the turnover and the fact that we don't have a full board, so maybe that could be a priority to kind of push council to make sure that we have full board, because there's so much work and that makes it even harder when we don't have enough bodies to do the work. if we continue to have a challenge with the city attorney's office and with the concept of getting a conflict of interest under some circumstances. I think we made progress this year. Last year, they did acknowledge that there could be a conflict of interest. There's also been turnover in the city attorney's office, which makes it more difficult because the lack of continuity there. So that's posed a challenge and an accomplishment.
If I may, real quick, I think with the, one thing that I'm noticing with the city attorney's office is I think great legal minds there, not making an assessment about the quality of the service, but more concerned about the bandwidth. And I think like even that, so even if there isn't a subject matter conflict of interest, there's a conflict because they need to prioritize and you don't have a full-time legal counsel dedicated to us. It's a group that they also are doing other things for the city. So I think that work constraint is not being articulated enough in a way that why we need independent counsel available for us. We have very time sensitive things, and also the board has and the office does, and then we balance in all this stuff in the city.
Was there anything about regulations or budget that stand out as challenges from last year?
Well, the regulations, the fact that the labor negotiations are going glacial pace, that's definitely been a challenge, a huge challenge.
But budget, even our budget for the PAB or?
Well, that could be included, or it could be our review of the community's budget, so the process that we built
Oh,
into that.
well, I wouldn't say, I think that would be over, flattering to say we built a process. We did, and probably we need a process, right? For a year, because that is a discretionary activity the board choose to undertake, and for years that the board does choose to undertake that. It would be great if there was an articulated process, particularly like the future iterations of this board. So I'd say that in itself is a challenge, we were making it up as we went anyway. I think ultimately it was fine when we landed, I don't think city council did anything with it. So that's probably another set of challenges for us is relevance, how do we assess our relevance, and again, like how do we bring some other interest groups or the community to bear to try to get more support for the various recommendations that we make.
Yeah, that makes me think about categories. Of activities that we've done where we've actually had an impact. So I think in categories of where the board was able to unilaterally make an impact, where the board sort of worked with council to make an impact, where the board worked with outside groups to make an impact, and where the board worked with EPD to make an impact. And by impact, I'm just talking about actual changes to policy or sort of like implementation of whatever. And I don't think that unilateral, I don't think in the first three categories we've had much success. I think with council, I don't know of a single thing last year where council, we put something in council and council came back and said, yes, we're gonna do it. For the first category about unilateral, I mean, maybe someone has an idea of something that we did where we actually had an impact. I can't think of one thing. But I think that with the community, I mean, the community has been involved with these what is it, the care, special SMEs, specialized care units, but we still haven't been able to like insert ourselves into that at all. So really everything that we've been doing in terms of impact is sport category. So I don't know how we can get those other three categories. You know, or fill those other three categories, but we should think.
Well, I think that's part of why I'm so focused on more engagement. In my world, that does drive policy to change, right? You have to have some people paying attention. And it's not that many people. That it doesn't take that many people, so. Beyond that, I don't know, delivering good, high quality work product. Not being too like. Hyperbolic or political in how we do our work. I think that helps build our legitimacy too.
So I guess like I see maybe a conflict there where. The people who are most likely to be engaged in our work would be the ones who have the strongest opinions. And then the type of work that we, like, that I hear you saying, we should produce is sort of like. You know, like an administrative agency where we're providing expert. So those are like. A little bit in conflict sometimes with each other, so I see that play out, like, you know, like I see it play out on the board, if you have an idea for how to navigate.
Yeah, I would just say like, people are used to. The folks that do engage on these topics, but I think people, we see similar. Rotation of people, I think council does as well. That group is not the group I feel we need to activate. I feel we need to activate. Regular other Berkeley folks like us, who are not necessarily super engaged on this now. I think that will make a difference, and I would say that a really interesting experience doing the policy that is getting on the agenda for this, right? And I got this lovely note from the woman after I shared the draft with her, where she just said, wow, like so much work that you did, I really appreciate it. That's what I mean, yeah, I'm sure she's not, well, other than this experience she had, she's not been kind of activated before. But that's someone that could really get behind our work. I mean, I don't want to single her out, that's the kind of thing that I'm thinking about, so. I don't know that they're in conflict, but they're maybe just different populations that need to be targeted.
I hear what you're saying, I certainly had that experience doing gun violence prevention legislation for so many years, is that it would always be. You know, our folks, and then the NRA and the legislature would see those same folks, and so we made a concerted effort to get the League of Women Voters involved. There are people who had, I wouldn't say more legitimacy, but didn't have the historical advocacy. So I found that helps, and so I hear you saying something.
Yeah, it is, because I think you get desensitized.
Right.
Right now, we don't have like a process built in for, like doing that type of one-on-one, or like, I don't know, give a draft to the person who made a policy. We don't.
No, that's in the, I think it's in the draft policy and how to do a policy complaint.
Okay,
And I know giving it to BPD is in, I believe the complaint, I chose to do that this time, but give it to both BPD and. And I think it's a very good process, but it took me so.
yeah,
It just, yeah, but it is the way to me, like, if you're gonna do it, this is how you do
yeah,
it.
that's on that, I think that's a really great idea, and we should figure out a way to build that into our policy review, or like we've been reviewing, right?
Yeah, I think, I'm just not sure where it is, the board did review a draft of the proposed approach to reviewing the policy. This is subject to a complaint that was received now. And there was feedback, we made, I think, Brent or Alex made changes to the document. I think we brought it back again. I just don't know where that is.
No, I remember.
You don't think we brought it back again?
I don't think so, but I.
Okay, yeah, so
We
I
can
think
revisit
that's just something that needs to be revisited.
Good, cool. Any other challenges that people have in mind? I feel like we should sit in this for 10 more minutes, like there's a lot there that we haven't even covered yet. director wants to weigh in.
Yeah, just more global things, I think, some things were neatly contemplated in transitioning between the previous model and our model that impacts you in ways that may not be abundantly clear, but even like the staffing and how that works. Who within our department is, our union employees and which aren't. Because then that also creates constraints and concerns and ways to ensure that we're protecting everybody's rights and all this.
Who are you talking about, being union employee?
Even within our office, yes, some members of our staff
I
are,
didn't know that.
yeah, they're represented by you. And that, again, nothing wrong by unions, it's just, you have to navigate things differently because there are the constraints. So then, and then that also like, in terms of us supporting you with subcommittee work, then we have to reorganize and making sure that again, we're paying overtime when required and all these different constraints. And it might be worthwhile taking a deep dive, and I've tried to, unsuccessfully have conversations about this, but one of those things where it's like, I bring it up and I keep moving, but it might be like, hey, this is how, we're trying to do this work, but globally, all these things weren't neatly fleshed out, how do we get? And even like the social media, I'm all supportive for it, but I'm not want 3 council cycles, but 3 budget cycles requesting the community engagement of individual staffers, because to me, that's a full-time job and in and of itself, to do it correctly. We're going to do what we can, but also like we need to prioritize our investigations, which those are non-negotiable.
And to hire a community engagement, like staff person, do you see that there's room in the budget as of now?
There is, no.
There isn't, no.
No, and I proposed it like now 3 separate in a classification, and actually we worked on the back end with HR. Because they have a role that would be perfect, but the way that the classification was written, it was only to be used for the communication under the city manager structure. So we worked on the back end with the personnel board to loosen up the language in the classification, we just don't have the funding to be able to get that role.
I think another challenge that I was just thinking about is, the fact that when we hear complaints that the chief and then the city manager still overwhelmingly, and I can't even remember if in one instance where we weren't overruled.
One.
Out of how many? So Hansel, how many?
2.
What?
2.
We've only had 2 hearings the last two?
No, 2 decisions that have been correct.
Okay, 2 out of how many?
I don't have the stats right now, so.
Is this from 2024 or you mean this?
Yeah.
Hold on, okay.
And it actually doesn't seem like we've had that many
No,
hearings. I mean,
we've been having many hearings at all.
no, I'm kind of surprised, but we've had to see. Oh. But yeah, it seems like we've had very few hearings, which is, I wonder why that is. People have thoughts about, and not that we necessarily should. We see can get a lot of hearings, but it's interesting that we haven't.
Yeah, I think part of it is because the language in the charter is very ambiguous, so it gives you the discretion. There's no set criteria for when you need to have a hearing per se, so that could be part of it.
One challenge that we have related to hearings was understanding what each standard meant for us, because apparently there's different definitions going around administrative closures as opposed to unfounded, unsustained.
And that's still gonna be a problem, unfortunately, because in our negotiations, we had proposed different definitions, which made more sense. And we've been advised that we need to stay consistent with the penal code definitions, so that's still a problem.
I think another challenge or something where we fell short that I want to be better at this year is we have such, we talked about this last trip, so we didn't do anything, but, we have such a resource, UC Berkeley, and we have. I see resources and I see unmet needs of our board in terms of producing. Work, related to policy. There's a lot of people at Berkeley who want to be doing this type of work, and we just have to form the connections. And in order to, bring them on board, and I know that the director's office had an internship program over the summer. I think that's the first, which is great, the first step.
That is great.
Yeah, and did you have an intern, is that right, just one?
Yeah, we're potentially getting three.
Three this summer, okay, so that's a seasonal, it's a seasonal program, but what I'm envisioning is something. A lot more like, allowing. Input into these really hefty policy. And being able to draw on them, their expertise in crafting policy as well. Any thoughts?
They have that expertise?
We're developing it, and we're giving them an opportunity, I mean, we can. Insofar as we have expertise, we can review their work, but in terms of the actual labor, fire and front end. If city council's not getting us the budget to do that work and it's not paying us to do that work, and we don't, then we should use them.
I would just say as long as this is very, very specific. Do a memo and identify all cities in the US that do X or something like that. Just in my own experience, if you just have to be aware of the quality of the work that you get, so I can't rely on somebody supposed to, some student who maybe doesn't know about this. So if you give them a very specific assignment, that can be, and I agree with you, underutilizing that resource considering where we are.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I know I've talked a little bit with the director about the staffing in the office. And, if everyone is fully utilized and what they're doing, and this is not me, sort of casting negative aspersions about anyone, but just because I've worked in, government agencies for a long time. And I just know that often everybody's not like fully deployed all the time. I do think interns can be great, but we definitely need more dedicated like staff support to get through this workload, I think. And I personally don't think we need a full-time communication person. That's something like I differ, because that is something we can outsource pretty effectively. You do need budget for it, but you don't necessarily have to staff person. But I'm happy to try. The interns that you have for the summer, are they paid?
So the one, we started with last year is through Cal's Public Service Center, and they pay them.
Oh, they pay.
Yeah, but either which way, our requirements here are that they get paid, so it has to go through the HR process. But that particular program is set aside.
It doesn't impact your budget.
No, that one doesn't. And then there's another one that we're in early discussions with, well, pretty advanced now, with the youth works program. Those are high school interns. Again, different skill set and different consideration, but that's also another resource academy.
I don't know, maybe I don't know how you feel about this summer. There is the break in August. I don't know what that would look like, but maybe if you're gonna get several, you can try having one work more closely with us directly.
Yeah.
And I would not want a high school student. But
Well, I think the internship program is great, but I guess I wanna challenge us to think more boldly as well, like. I'm thinking of maybe long term. Identifying people, not students, but professors, people with expertise in the DOJ. Who can serve as like a brain trust for us to reach out to. I know that when it comes to this vehicle pursuit policy, I connected with. Professor Alper, who is known as like the foremost authority on vehicle pursuits, and he was really open to talk to me, about our policy and to actually get into the weeds of it and talk to the Stanford's Center for Racial Justice, and they wrote a model use of force policy. And I've now, emailed them a few times about our vehicle pursuit policy, and they shared resources with us. I've talked to people in SF Police Commission about their use of force and vehicle pursuit policy, and we've met people at NACL and who can serve as that. And so I think, an internship program is one, I'm imagining like line of support, but I'm also imagining building up a network of like I'm saying, brain trust of people we can reach out to, who can weigh in on policy decisions that we're making and who can also provide some sort of like credibility to the decisions that we're making as well. Which is sort of what I was trying to do with this vehicle pursuit policy, but I was building it from the. But I think that if we can identify people and sort of like establish a formal relationship with them, it can go a long way.
That's interesting. But I like that. The work on establishing relationships. Not just students, but people that may be able to give more valuable input.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different, strands we can. Does everyone have any thoughts on the idea?
Well, I was just thinking if we were gonna approach council with something to get a report from some experts, some professor or whomever would be great. And we could wrap it if they wanted us to, but that would be really helpful. So I have that idea of developing these more formal relationships. I guess it's a matter of identifying those folks and then figuring out how to establish those, but I think that would be very helpful.
Like, how did you get in contact with the professor? Did you just reach out just through email, just random?
Whole email.
Okay,
Whole email.
whole email and it worked. Nice.
I mean, the people who are spending this much time, who are experts, like, if someone is actively applying their work and in the field, they love it. They really want to be,
Right.
so I don't know if there's an action set that proceeds from this, but, it's an idea that I think we should. It's important, because even like, we just beginning a letter of support or, asking for one requires previous, relationships.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're almost at 1 o'clock, so I think we should move to the next, which is all related, lessons learned, ways to improve our performance. But I guess before we talk about that, we should focus on what our performance. That's important, or Wilson, I think we're gonna leave that discussion.
Yeah, so we have page 8. This should be the most current version of the performance metrics that Brent and I have worked on. I'm not sure what the overall means. I think that means how often we assess our performance against the metrics, but this is what we have come up with. I don't know, and this of course did come to the board once, and then I think there were some minor edits that we see, including a reference to NACL. We did follow up on that, and I think NACL was in the process of, but had not yet developed metrics for oversight boards. So I don't think we actually were able to get anything too helpful from that avenue. So I don't know if these resonate with folks. Obviously, if these are our metrics, then in our annual report, for example, we would be reporting out of this. It also requires probably some kind of new data watch. This is different from, well, effectiveness. So I think you were talking about this earlier, Josh, having these different domains of effectiveness. What do we do, like, as a standalone entity with our effectiveness? What is our effectiveness been in partnership with the council, with the department, etc. So you see, we have like an effectiveness bullet, but not a lot of clarity on how that would be measured. And that's obviously the hardest one, as opposed to the rest, which are like process and outputs. But I do think it's really important for us that we are in a position where we are accountable, we need to hold ourselves accountable. So I feel like we need to formally adopt something and start reporting on something. I'm not.
So it sounds like we need to take this back to the board.
Yeah, and see,
Continue working.
do we have more changes that we think are needed? And I would suggest that we should not just add, like, if we start adding stuff, we should do something. Because we can.
Well, because like, there's a lot of questions in here that we need to answer, right, before we can have a policy, that's
But we could, talk about them a little bit here.
right.
It's been shared, yes.
Okay, so the timely completion of all land would be not complaint related responsibilities. I know later we're gonna talk about a calendar. And that shouldn't be that hard, to figure out that.
I like, yeah, so I'm just going in order, I guess, this effectiveness, the second one, effectiveness of mandated non-complaint related responsibilities, the second bullet there, make sense as one of them. And that to me would fit in the second bucket of impact that I previously. So basically, we would, create similar metrics across the other three buckets. That's sort of what I would do.
Remind me what I know BPD is like, with the.
Unilateral and then with the public. Or through public. So there is unilateral through city council, through the public, and then with BPD.
But what would our effective be percent of recommendation that the PAB was able to execute on its own motion or something, or unilateral, or? Because I also think with public engagement, it would be like an artificial distinction, like sometimes you're gonna have public engagement and the city council. The public engagement is actually a vehicle to getting BPD or city council to agree with something.
Yeah, I think that bucket is satisfied by the action, like we could. It's not an impact metric, but it is an assessment.
The community engagement. Yeah.
So I guess the open question is, like what should be included? If it is. I think that the, following our own complaints timeline is part of what should be included in that. We're just organizing according to these categories. That's really the only thing that we can do unilaterally, as opposed, or in addition to like publishing reports, for example. We don't need any approval to do that.
Yeah, so I think I think forget about the buckets for this. Okay, but it's like effectiveness, so one of it is percent of our recommendations that are actually adopted. Okay, if it's council, if it's the department, whatever. And then maybe it is percent of, well, I don't know about percent, but when you talk about reports. It's like we're measuring our work product. Our effectiveness by the fact that we're doing this. We've already got timely completion of mandated activities, so maybe we want to have something about non-mandated activities. And that would be perhaps some more reports. Otherwise, I think effectiveness could be very simple, percent of our recommendations that are adopted.
Yeah, I guess my question to that would be, just taking this vehicle pursuit process as an example, how we would analyze all the little changes that we agree to, and stand that up against, a big, recommendation that may or may not be accepted.
Right, because it's huge, the amount of work that goes into just having and doing on some small thing that's significant, but it's not the entire policy being adopted. It's hard to know how to characterize. And to have our reports reflect, the metrics need to reflect how much work we do, because if you're just going by, some of these metrics, I don't think accurately reflect, but I'm not sure how to. I'm not sure how to, what they should be to actually reflect that we do a lot of work.
So there's like, again, I think in categories, what Vice Chair Wilson was saying is that we have those sort of like blood and sweat metric where we're showing our work equity, with it sweat equity, where we talk about the number of meetings that we've engaged in, the number of policies that committees that we've adopted, that we've, and then we also have an impact metric. That shows it's sort of percent adopted. And do you think that the first set, like the sweat equity metric could fit in this?
I think it can,
Okay,
it's, yeah, like a process or a workflow metric. Those would be added.
Okay.
Right, because they're not here now.
Because if you're looking at a whole year, you've been working on the vehicle pursuit policy for a year, right? So if you're just looking at what policies were adopted, 0. Right, I mean, I don't think. Is this so that doesn't capture how much, if you're just looking at the number of policies, because they take so long.
So what would we want to report on workload, though? Would we want to talk about how many hours we all spent? Or would we want to talk about?
It's how dense the agendas are. And that's something that I would like to try to put in the agendas. And that last meeting was great, we got out pretty early, but I think that would be helpful. To be very thoughtful about our meetings and what we have to go. What has to be agendized each time.
that's like the opposite of sweat equity though, right? It's like saying I don't know what the metric is, but it's like we're saying something like. How focused or good it is, I don't know.
Well, I think,
I'm not saying that's a metric, I'm just saying that's something we should strive to do.
Okay.
I'm thinking that it probably doesn't make sense to start counting how much time we're spending. I'm thinking maybe it is to talk about what we've been doing. So, is significantly investing time in modifying vehicle pursuit policy. Policy reviews, pursuant to policy complaints that aren't finished, but we can talk about what they've been done, but a bit more of a qualitative section.
Right.
Because when you start to talk about how much time we spend, I don't know, it's matter.
No, I was never
No,
saying,
I-
talking about the number of hours,
Yeah.
but just that. An incredible amount of time was spent on this policy and on the regulations.
Yeah.
Trying to get those passed, but yeah, it's more qualitative, I mean, it's quantitative too, but not, how many policies did you have?
Yeah.
Regardless of how much, so you say sweat equity is put into it.
And if we organize that by our subcommittee, like just thinking about reporting.
Yeah.
Would it capture everything?
Almost. But if you broke it down by subcommittee, or you just showed the number of meetings, I mean, like, instead of hours, the number of meetings would be one of them. That's a reporting metric, it's not a value there. But you compare that internally against each other, see which one would be the most accurate.
Yeah, I mean, we could report on them, I'm just thinking about like how this would go in the annual report. You can talk about the number of meetings in the reporting period. And then you could talk about key accomplishments and milestones. With respect, that's what I'm asking if the committee structure is the best structure, but
I
might
mean, it's
be-
helpful, I don't know if we don't want to say this.
Yeah. And highlight the ones that
Yeah.
we've done. But But I think we should probably also, like, if the subcommittee hasn't done anything for a year, this is another one where. I feel like people feel bad if we don't take on work, and it's also the. Maybe about we can't end a subcommittee. But I think we can, because we can only reestablish one of the year.
Hopefully the conflict of interest subcommittee isn't on the next. Yeah.
And I'm kidding, I feel strongly that we need absolutely, but I. You know. It doesn't mean we can't monitor and do it.
Right.
So we have fewer subcommittees to report no activity,
Right.
right? We haven't had activity for a year, may not be it.
I think that what you're saying is one of the things that I've been on, that's been. I mean, like, on hold basically is the off-duty subcommittee. And that one has been deprioritized compared to the pursuit of the body camera policy, and it also fits within policy. I mean, one of the actions that we did
Yes.
is folding it into policy. Is that right?
Yes. I move that we fold the off-duty conduct subcommittee.
Can we do this?
I know.
Not at all.
What I would suggest, just because it wasn't contemplated, and what was done before. No, at this point, it's done for Wednesday. Mhm. We could, one thing that worked that the board had done in the past is that we scheduled an item where we reviewed everything. The board sat down and said, okay, we still have the subcommittee open, do we actually need it, can we fold it in? And we consolidated into the list that we currently have. If it's beneficial, again, maybe not at this next meeting, but at a following meeting, we could do that exact same thing. To like close the ones that need a formal motion, like the conflict. of
But maybe
interest
for
and stuff.
next week.
Mhm.
That,
Yeah, like that one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But let's see. I think we're all okay with timely completion of mandated activities, that's obviously important. Effectiveness of what we're doing, we're not exactly sure, but I think at a minimum it would be percent of recommended. I think there's.
That's fucking up. So one of our. One of our mandated non-compliant responsibilities is simply reviewing, for example, weapons or. Reports for ED. There's not really like, anything that anyone needs to adopt in response to our recommendation, it's just that we did it. So for that category. Is there anything that?
It just goes under there. So I guess effectiveness is only where. Right, nobody has to, nobody have. If adopting our recommendation is not relevant, then it would be. Option there, in like the numerator or the denominator.
Just wanted to. Make sure. So,
So what do you guys think of the personnel complaint?
I'm okay with what we discussed in terms of the mandate non-play effectiveness and the person.
you're talking about effectiveness?
Yes. Any thoughts? Should have asked that first. Sorry.
Thoughts on what?
The bullet around effectiveness of personnel complaint investigations.
Narrow. But that's. I don't know, it seems to me, only because. That's gonna mean we're not effective. We just look at those numbers. I wonder if there's some other way that we're still being effective, even if. Even if our determinations are upheld, I mean, maybe not, is that the only way we're effective, is if.
Director, do we have like a average of like the time of the completion of personnel complaints? Investigations?
Not at this time.
Okay.
We had that. I was just thinking though, in terms of the agreement, and now we're getting more elaborate, articulation of why the chief, made her decision or how. I think we just don't have the same baseline understanding of these things, so although there should be grounded on legal realities, some of these concepts, we just seem to be approaching them differently. And I'm wondering if and when, if and until we get to the point where we have the same baseline between the three entities here, the PAB, EPA, BPD, and the city manager, then are we gonna still have this non-agreement with in the way that we have it?
I don't know if this is what you're referring to, but yesterday in our meeting on the regulations, the chief said something about how we don't have the full picture because we don't understand, maybe this is the first time this person has, not been perfect, or maybe there've been prior allegations, right? You know what I'm talking about? Well, she was kind of saying, we don't understand necessarily the big when it comes to officer performance and their past history.
For discipline purposes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, which I think that is also an issue itself, like we're making these recommendations on discipline, we should have that background. Well, I
It
don't
would be
know,
helpful to have her speak to that. I mean, I don't know what to say, but just generally,
right,
because we don't understand necessarily how it works, and if we recommend discipline, it's not gonna be just in isolation. We're just gonna look at it in the context of.
Well, I guess for me, this is a very important set of math. I think it does matter. I'm open to other ones. I mean, there is another one, which is like just to do it on time.
What is there?
Yeah, it is there.
Yeah.
So to me, we're kind of capturing both
Yeah.
compliance and
Right.
and effectiveness, but if you have a better idea.
Well, I mean, for me, this one is hard because. Let's say. I don't wanna be in the world based on the interpretations that we've seen, where we're 100% in agreement with them on the complaints. I think that the complaints that we've affirmed exceeded by the decision, and so. It's not like performance metric in my mind to. Try to get to 100% with the department, so that one for me is a little priority than maybe the city manager, and I think tied to that metric is. Being articulate and persuasive in our opinions about why we are, and so the city manager one, for me, more important than the department level. I mean, not to say that the department is swayed, but they do approach the issue very different.
Okay.
And I do still like this idea of including the surveys that complain, that was my idea, I mean, customer satisfaction. And just get their input, what was this experience like, how could we improve? Yeah.
But I think Josh, you were just saying, like, we have this as city manager versus the department, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was just saying, that they shouldn't be weighted equally.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, let's keep going through it. So then we have the policy committee. Timeliness suggests we're gonna adopt a standard. Right,
We should,
yeah,
we wanna talk about that, or?
yeah, I think we should. The data we got in our last meeting told us. I don't. There. Many months pending, right?
Couple of years.
Oh, yeah, I know it's I don't know, staff team like Jose and council, do you guys know if anybody have they set any time frames for policy reviews? Any other board that you know or ODPA equivalent?
For. Derek, do you have examples?
It's not coming to mind right now, I'm trying to going through my Rolodex here, but yeah, I don't, it's not coming, I don't wanna misspeak to it. We can look into that though,
Yeah, maybe that might be a good idea to look into,
yeah.
bring it to the board, that way it'll help us develop more of a time structure.
It seems to me like if I was just making something up, I would say, a year, you shouldn't have it, that seems very generous. But, you know, beyond that just seems crazy. So I'd be really willing to start there.
But then the board just need to be mindful about us not assigning so many.
Additional,
Yeah, when because the old ones, they're probably. They're not, obviously not top priority, we can bring something onto the list. So we have to be careful about that.
so also being mindful of the order of operations as far as like which policies to review.
But
Right.
yeah,
As far as a timeline goes. So would it be dictated by the time, but like the earliest one that you began, or,
not necessarily. Yeah,
right,
I mean, you know,
and then that's the problem, right?
Right.
That's why things get pushed to the.
but if you have a year. Been a year, we dismiss these. Finish it up.
So make a decision within a year, what's to dismiss or complete it.
Kind of arbitrary, but it's better than nothing.
I think this is in my recommendation, my initial. It was about setting different policy reviews on different tracks. So the first track would be for those major policy reviews, right? They would have a certain deadline track. And then you have like these minor policy reviews. However, we categorize that, I don't know. That would be on a quicker track.
But
And
by the major one, you need ones that are mandated also. Because we have several that are in that mandated category.
I guess it's hard for me to answer that, but I'll give you an example. A major one in mind is the bond camera one, and then a minor one in mind is the policy being carried into the sidewalk. Violation that the former chair was doing.
It's like,
Exactly.
I
So,
Community.
yes,
Okay.
both of those things will be in place, but I think that we as a board know and can prioritize those. And identify this one should take 2 months before we're gonna close it, and this other one's gonna take a year before we. That was what was it.
Yeah, and you know, unfortunately, we don't have, I don't know, I didn't guys have access to. I don't know, we'll find it, but the last draft that I mentioned, you know, we did do a draft. Process for reviewing. Policy complaints, I remember that my original idea was. Was that you as the policy committee were gonna do this kind of review and prioritization. And then it got edited, so I think it's the full board. But it's to your point, that whatever that process is the right time to then. Do a prioritization, and maybe they just have different time, and I think that's fine.
How about if, whenever we receive policy complaint, we, at the end of that presentation from the director's office, we vote on which track to put it in. Which track to put it on.
Like a tier,
Yeah, we can, that way we have, a collective vote. That sort of like voices our priority of the board as well, because one thing that the chief keeps saying to us is we don't know what the priorities are for this. Policy review, and so we can also voice that through that as well.
oh, has it been with the chief, that's it?
She just has expressed that they've been hearing a lot of, they've heard many different policy complaints, and they have limited bandwidth to respond to all of them, so they want to know.
The other thing we can do, if we do adopt the year time limit. If staff has a calendar and then if it's coming up, agendize it, it's like this policy is coming up on the year mark. Are we going to prioritize it or kick it? And just. Just so we keep on task. And you guys can bring it to the board, because otherwise we're not gonna.
We can have. We're actually
Right.
getting some. I'm saying it's good. And
Potential renewal would be another option. Okay, that makes sense. It does make sense.
So I do think we need to, figure out what those categories are, right, the timeframes, the different categories.
is it possible for, are you working with a subcommittee on this? Or is it just you?
It's just me now because, Brett is gone. And I have thought we could fold that work, combine it with the option process one,
Yeah.
which is me and Alan. So I think there could be one subcommittee, and you are now with me on Brent.
Yeah.
I mean, me on budget and metrics, so we could bring in option process.
So let's, at our next meeting, do a subcommittee breakdown review. And then with the idea that the meeting after that, so the second meeting in February, meeting to. Just like policy trend. Proposal. Does that sound work?
Yeah. So the problem I'm having is, I hope you guys can see, the last draft that I have of our policy review process is November 4th. And I have an email, it's in, no, I have an meeting September 6th with your edits. I don't know what's happened, because the November 4th one still has the top review by the policy committee, and I know you guys did not want that at the first step. And I thought there was something edit. So,
We sent it back to your subcommittee.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I thought that we did it, so that's why
I think there was also something where come up with a work plan and when you think the work's gonna be done. And I objected to that just because we have no control over. When the work's gonna be done, if we wouldn't have said the vehicle versus policy would take more than a year, so.
Maybe the director docs has notes from that discussion. That they can send us.
yeah, I mean, I will reshare this and maybe it will be helpful to the notes. But I think that the part that everybody objected to the most was that beginning of,
Yeah, I think we want staff to be the first.
yeah, with staff. But then after that, I think it was sort of okay, and that the after that part is what I tried to do with this last class. That I did. When did you get it? Okay.
So we are at 1:30. We can also just work the run, and then you can grab some food and just keep going right on what people want to do, but
I've done it.
yeah, that's what, grab some lunch, take a quick break.
We go, on off the record, 5 minutes.
Okay.
Let's take a 5-minute lunch. Yeah.
One.
Okay, we're back and excuse us, some, I believe we left off with Vice Chair Wilton screen sharing.
I'm screen sharing, but.
Okay.
So, as I said, this does not reflect. So, sit down.
No, sorry. We're getting there, it's just, there you go.
Doesn't reflect what we discussed. because you want staff to do this whole first part, I think, work it up. And then bring it to the board. But then the board will have those assignment options. Assign a specific board member to the policy committee, to an ad hoc committee, or to staff, or review not recommended. So I think other than it being done by your committee, if that's reworked, that does reflect what you have in mind, right?
Yeah, except for maybe a second level of voting where we would vote on this.
Yeah, but okay, we would add, I mean, that's what we would add that.
Yeah, but I think you're right.
So you'll bring that back?
Yeah, so so assignment and then it's gonna be. But why don't we talk about the priorities then?
Right, this is where we got hung up on last time. Happy to open it up. So you're talking.
I can't really read that.
Let me make it bigger.
Well, not
Big
this,
cheese.
we're talking about a new, it's gonna be a new number 2, it's gonna be, you don't have to take notes, and I mean, we can probably take that down, I'll take notes. We're talking about after the board decides they wanna take it on. And they decide who's gonna do it. Or maybe before, they're gonna give it a priority. We've never talked about that process. And what the categories are.
I think one factor should be board member input. Because if the whole board says this is a priority and nobody's raising their hand to work on it, that's not gonna work. So it should be a factor, you know.
I think another factor should be the public's interest. If we have 15 people at our meeting to hear this policy, I mean, we should go.
Is that the question with you?
No, just. Two.
Exactly, but what about like impact or, right?
I mean, significance of policy, that's a little squishy, but we all know what that means.
I think significance is a good word. I think it's like, it keeps a standard, right? It's not like, we're not identifying what is significant.
Right. Because significant, not in physical, but at least quantitatively, like if we have like X amount of cases, is that how we?
Not necessarily even, we like the fourth, I mean,
Yeah.
we like significant.
Right, okay.
I think part of the purpose of being on the board, right, is bringing our priorities and understanding what is significance of police policy to bear on that question.
Yeah. And I would say, I've had my own little limited experience, I didn't think my very could be at first. And then I saw, wow, there's no publication of any expected, response times to calls for service, like, the community has no visibility into that. Probably, we shouldn't. Anyway, okay, so I've got board member interest, public interest, significance of policy. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Should we, and then I think we do like one more than bubble. With different timeframes.
Yeah. We invert the listing
I don't care, they're not in priority one.
for author's sake, I guess.
From a travel report perspective, you also gonna play with the language, maybe, because all these things are gonna be significant to somebody, yeah, so. How we,
Impact scope.
right,
So if we have one, it's level 1, that means it's. Really important.
But urgency also.
Okay.
Going back to the, I think it's a good one, because if we say. If we communicate to members of the public that this is significance, policy, I think that it's the wrong message. I think maybe the standard should be like the systemic nature of the policy. I don't know, like, to me, that's an element of significance. I mean, so like, I personally would say that significance, or something to communicate that it's not the importance to that.
I just wrote impact and urgency. That's two different ones. We could play around with it.
So impact would be,
Like, what's,
Yeah.
yeah, like, it's gonna have a huge impact.
yeah.
Like, use of word lit, right? Sidewalk, not. But let's get to the hard thing, how fast do we think we should be doing this thing?
Well, we're saying a year for the outside. We can work.
Tier one. Track one. Tier.
Because they all take time, even if you.
I think it's also not just about time, it's a factor of time plus personnel, so let's say like. You have it's like time, 1 year subcommittee as opposed to 1 year individual board member, you know. 6 months subcommittee, 6 months individual board member, there's different
Well, you
resource
do,
allocation.
are you gonna be, this department gonna be involved, you know,
Yeah.
it's gonna there from.
Exactly, and we should recommend to them to be involved with here when. You know, we want to be involved in this process, the day to day, week to week, I guess. And that should be part of the communication strategy.
Okay, right now in the policy process document, it's a. BPD will be given the opportunity and will be encouraged to participate in the meeting for all of them. This is in the document that was on the screen, and I did do that in one I just did recently. I think it is a good practice,
Well, it's a different level of participation too. So sometimes you want the entire time, you want them, you want to be at the table with them, others like, well, we've come up with this, what do you think? So. Certainly given the opportunity and. Be nice if we had some sort of agreed program too, with the department about. Our policy work. You know, something that we can get their buy-in.
Well, I think, what I'm imagining right now, based on what we're talking about. Is being able to report in our annual report order for the council. The board undertook 3 level 1 priority policy reviews. And the department participated in all 3 of those, as you know. As we asked, or I don't know, according to our protocol. And that would be the important metric, and then we say like, we really want to be participating in these level 1s. Level 2s, it's encouraged, but if you're resource constrained, then focus on the level 1s. Level 3 is like, we're gonna provide you our final report, we don't need your day-to-day information. But I don't know how that would work, when I share this in your policy review. How much like back and forth would you need to engage with the department on, because I don't know if you would, within this 1, 2, 3. Just like, you know, retrospect, categorize it as a move that system.
I probably would have categorized it as a 3.
And how much review did it require from DPD or indeed?
It wasn't insignificant because, right, you would write something and then publish it and they tell you it's wrong. So I had a lot of help from staff. Then I sort of came up with what I was thinking I was gonna say. Then I asked the department to review it, and if there were any other policies or things I was missing, right, because you also don't want it to be like, oh, you've done it, and then.
And can you remind me what this policy is?
This is one, the complaint was, rude dispatchers. lack of understanding of how calls are prioritized, this is probably primary for all of us. And then something about, trying to get a record of the call transcript.
Hmm.
So, ready to say, there's no policy, that directs how property crimes in progress are prioritized. Before I make that assertion, I want them to check it, because I don't want them after we publish it saying, we have written policy. So that's the kind of thing, so if we did review and make edits in the report, I sent it to the department and then to the complaint. So I don't know, there's a tremendous amount, it wasn't like ongoing, one meeting and then like sit back.
Okay, that would align with, because what we're sensing in vehicle pursuit policy is. Basically bi-weekly meetings where we need 1 or 2 BPD representatives for, and like for, 6-7 months, because. We're having to work out the. The inner workings of the policy, so that's only one.
Nothing.
Okay, so I feel like my suggestion is working, at least if we're retrospective. Are you trying?
But I also don't think we can do that. I agree that it's great to tell the department what the expectations are, the hopes. But the way this is written, it's very open to.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to specify it, but I'm suggesting tier 1, 3 months, tier 2, 6 months. Tier 3, 12, just to put something on the table.
Give me.
Okay.
But on that.
And then like,
Did not
they bring it to the board to collectively agree on the timeline.
In the person.
What about the backup? What about all,
I know, that's why I don't think we should take new ones on.
but should we retroactive, I mean, should we go through all the existing ones and put them into a bucket and,
I can give 12 more minutes for them.
because there are a lot. Pencil?
Yeah.
I'll look at all of them,
Yeah.
and then have a agenda item and the second. Meeting in February, so you already have.
And there's also one, so. We probably wouldn't have a lot of other agenda items.
That one, actually, that's the meeting, we'll have the discussion. That we pursue. Q1. Board member Williams, did you, what your theme that you've been working on? What would you retrospectively put it in? What tier would you put it in, and would it fit?
I put it in tier, well. It's gonna take a lot of time. So I put it in the tier, it qualifies for a year. For a company.
What's the substance?
It's department policy, so just review. All the department policy and just try and find the and. Substantive way to improve. If
All the department policies?
I think
It sounds like.
it's like yeah, it's a lot.
Was this in response to the complaint? I guess I'm missing.
Well, I missed, I wasn't here the previous meeting, and it was a subcommittee that was created during that meeting, and then the next meeting I arrived, it's kind of voluntold to take it, and it seemed like not everyone was excited about doing it. Perhaps you could shed some light.
I will say, if you spoke correctly, this is the one about personnel complaints, it naturally has to get told because it's still doing the regulations discussion. If anything changes there, it's going to impact that. One of the, this was born out of, a complaint where we couldn't get to the hearing stage and we had to drop it. So the students were concerned about like our prophecy, so we looked at it further and we saw there was a lack of synergy between our regulations and the BPD policy regarding personnel complaints. So we're trying to harmonize. And then, but now because of regulations, some of the stuff is still gonna have to naturally get updated anyway, so it might have to just follow that natural sequence. Anyway.
I think we have a good sense, and it's also too, we are behind them in the. Did you have a?
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, perfect. And we're right on.
We should revisit. Yeah, we'll have that.
Did we get anything from Chip's kind of a, transition memo?
No, it's a good idea though.
Yeah, and I think it's so fresh enough.
It would be good to have him just ask him anyway, if we could do just a quick transition memo about pending projects.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Like 60 years. Good luck, guys.
That's a good way to know, which is good luck.
Is that a foreshadowing?
No.
Okay, so now, next agenda, mandated versus discretionary PAB activities. And so I guess this is just a recitation. Put this in there, but maybe we're just, and Hansel, you were gonna discuss this, and we've got the page 10 of the,
Yes.
or you go ahead.
So, you can put that up.
Yes. So.
So this is the more visually friendly version of this, but in essence, the charter summarized it. Once you do a lot of wonderful things, some of them, it's requiring you to do it and mandatory, and other ones are more discretionary or permissible, you can do if you want to. So we, based on the board's request, we put together this sort of brochure or this visualizer, this flyer that kind of puts the two different things that you have to do. There's a memo, also, can you make it a little bit? That explains this, but to go into some of these items, and your mandatory side, you have to approve the annual report. So our office, we write it, we bring it to city council, to city attorney. And then for their legal review, and then we bring it to the board. And you review it, and then it goes to council. So that's one of the examples of mandatory. Then we have reviewing and making recommendations of newly adopted policies. That's again, your mandatory bucket. Adopt regulations for handling complaints filed with the DPA. So our office does the personnel complaints. And then we bring it to you, and you can either modify, affirm, or reject the findings. And then that will go off to the chief of police. You can also make recommendations to the chief on discipline as well. You could consult with the city manager for the hiring of a new chief of police when there's a vacancy. Receiving information on any agreed contract adopted by the city council related to the PAB's work. Creating a regular commendation program for employees to the BPD, which that was being led by board member Blackaby. So that's something that there's a gap there now. We conducted a review of the internal processes every 2 years, which I know vice chair is on top of and wants us to be very mindful about. And on the permissible side, you have the ability to advise and make recommendations to the public, city council, city manager. On the written policies, practice and procedures, so we call a lot of our work policy review, but again, the language is practices and procedures as well. Review and recommend for the city council approval of all agreements, letters, and memoranda of understanding. At the last meeting, you took action because your standard rules require you to set up a subcommittee, now you're doing it as a full board. The packet that's going out today will have a gentle suggestion about how you can potentially do it. The last batch of MOUs we received is over 500 pages. So you have to create some sort of system, how to do it in a realistic way. And do that. To act as records of city department, compelled tenants, and sworn employees. Again, when you're doing your work, you naturally have to ground it on data and information, otherwise you just in social media around making opinions, but you have the ability to utilize some of your power to improve subpoena. So adopt rules and regulations necessary to conduct your business, which are your standard rule, which are going to be converted into the operations manual. Provide community participation in setting and reviewing policy department, policy practice and procedures, with board member Cayetano was talking about tapping into different subject matter experts. I would say it's one of the examples of how that's done, and also you have individual community members also participate in the subcommittees. And then any other powers and duties that the city council may assign it by ordinance. The FIP is one of those examples where you receive a referral from council, and historically there have been other examples of that.
Would be helpful, and I don't know if you did this in the later materials, it's like under the mandatory, which ones are mandatory, like annual? Is it mandatory once to do it, like?
And there's a calendar,
Yes.
yeah, which I think is board member, Vice Chair Wilson, started this and then we workshopped it, but, it does have the sort of the schedule there, like the annual report, and then when, potentially if this process is started.
So what I was hoping we could do today was come up with a draft calendar for when in each year. You know, institutionalize, when is the annual report going to be done? When, you know, the use of force policy or whatever we have to do, maybe that's not annual, but, you know, and just end up with a calendar for the board to vote on proposal, so we know when we have to do certain things.
Yeah, I think this is the beginning of it, we kind of have to make it up, because I think very few, if any of these, have a date set out in the charter. And
Right, but they say it's annual, so we could say, okay, it's 2025, looking ahead. We know we have these 3 things we have to do this year. Or however many things, and come up with some suggestions about when we might do them.
So one idea, we're just gonna get really into the nitty-gritty, is this second line on page 1, biannual review of internal processes. My suggestion is that this meeting, we set these annual retreat calendar planning sessions, satisfy that element, and our deadline is basically Q1. Right now we're doing it annually, which is more than what the charter requires, but we don't need to do an additional review besides what we're doing right now.
I mean, depends how you define review of it, internal process. That sounds kind of broad, but I think, yeah, we can say we satisfy that.
Have a thought on that? Right now, I'm saying Q1 for biannual review of internal processes.
okay,
Q1, and that's sort of like what we've been doing for the past year.
right,
So the annual report is handled April still.
Yeah, so we're waiting, some of these things, we'll keep you updated, we're waiting on, the police department, they're wrapping up their annual data, so that we include. We still haven't gotten it, the chief said around this time we should expect it, so if we stick with that timeline, we should be still, hoping to get it to you by then. So,
Get it to us.
yeah, to PAB, right,
Remember, it takes some time after it gets to us.
yeah.
We had feedback last time, it required a lot of revision.
Yes, yeah, but now we have liaisons that are working more closely, so they're gonna be doing that review before it hits the PAB staff.
And like with the surveillance use report. Is that, do we have any sense of when that will be?
I think it spells it out in the,
It's what?
it gets spelled out, I believe, in the,
Oh,
in
I
the
think
split
one-
notes. Yeah. Put it up here.
That's dependent on BPD submitting it to us, though, right?
I thought that was the opposition report.
There's both of them.
It was confusing.
Yeah, this is talking about the, just based on the ordinance that it's citing, the acquisition and use reports. There's one that's coming up at our meeting next week. Yeah, Wednesday. This really comes up as it's provided to us by the department, or there's new acquisitions. So there isn't exactly a fixed date, or a fixed time of year that we would expect to review it. The city manager does have the annual report and policy, that they release every year, just summarizing how they use the technology. But if I recall correctly, and I'll confirm, that doesn't really have a particular action from the board apart from receiving it. Mhm. Yeah,
So I'm sorry, surveillance use policy and surveillance acquisition report are both provided to us on an ad hoc basis.
yes,
So there's no way to set a date.
no.
Same with the controlled equipment, no.
No, the controlled equipment, that one we could set a date. Because it's supposed to be given to us by March 15th. That's an annual review. Berkeley has the specific requirement that makes us review it. But then the BPD, because it's also a state requirement, there's another version of the same report that they have to produce to the state that they need to send. It's redundant in many regards. The version that Berkeley requires them to produce has a lot more detail than the military one that they send to the state. But they're one and the same thing. It's just our version's more detailed, and that's the one that we review.
A big issue. As far as I read, it's like the level of art, because you can say, oh yes, somebody X weapon on X day and
We didn't have a lot of information of the specific uses. Mhm.
the sense was that we really couldn't provide a lot of meaningful input. You guys remember that?
Mhm.
So I don't know if,
The most we can say is that they reported on every metric that the city requires. We couldn't go into this. We can provide substantive feedback.
and I kind of vaguely remember chips. Chip was gonna look into that more, get more information, but to get information about every incident, I mean, it would be.
Well, we propose a methodology that you may consider where one could be just audited, not looking at all of them, but potentially just picking out potential ones. So we could bring that up again. It might be worthwhile. We would just need to, if we pick out like that, like an audited approach, then we just need to make sure we coordinate well with the department so we can provide us the relevant record. in time.
We don't know what was envisioned, this is review and recommendation council, recommendation being, yeah. Accept it, or
No. Or no, it's insufficient, but don't reject the support for that reason.
because that could be huge, or it could be hardly anything, depending on how we handle it.
Well, for right now, we're talking about setting dates. Would this be?
Right, but I'm thinking if the dates, if we're gonna do, because last year I think there was a sense about we can't provide meaningful input. Well, if that's the case, then it doesn't take.
Yeah.
But if we're really gonna take it on more, it would take more time. But I don't know if we have the resources to take it on. Maybe we could do a tentative calendar with this March date and say. So it's. Or a date it's mutually agreed upon. With them. Cancel, you know what?
Oh, it's with the BPD. They're supposed to give it to us by March 15th, but there's the flexibility if they reach out to us. To let us know or vice versa.
And then is there a time frame in
Um,
which we're thinking? Recommend.
I believe it's either 30 or 60 days, one of those two.
That's-
Mhm.
Who's got the March 15 date?
That's by ordinance.
And we can calendar. It's been about 30 days.
Mhm.
Right. But then I guess we just need to decide then who has the capacity or what we wanna do, because if it's 30 days, that's how they intend it, it's 60 days, there's enough time if somebody wants to take it on to do a deep dive. But that would take time to do a deep dive on this.
It's 60 days.
So,
60 days from March 15th.
60 days from the date that we received the report. Mhm. About, yeah.
Okay, May 15. If someone's written this down. I think that the first thing we need to do, I remember this conversation, is we need to ask the city attorney's office again. If we have the ability to request these records. From the department to do a quality audit in order to provide our recommendation, because the idea is that. If we are required under charter to provide a substantive review of this, then we should have access to the data. That would allow us to do so.
we try to get, and they said,
It was too late, we didn't have a process,
oh, wasn't the department said you.
they didn't say. We didn't talk about it, we're talking about it enough in advance, but we can ask the city. attorney's office if we even have the authority to see.
Which I think it's been addressed in a different context, but again, it's something that we check in. Just sort of touching back, there's 4 policy reviews that are in the 1,000 range days. A big holdup for those was because we were determining what records we had access to for reviews because it involved in one way or another a personnel complaint. So that's something that we could look forward to.
We should have that answer.
Yeah, so as long as it's for policy reviews for those records, because it's within the scope of our work.
So this one's not in a policy review, though, it's for charter, it's other charter.
Right,
Policy.
which would still, at least I would interpret as still within the scope of our work.
Before we ask it, sure.
Before we ask for the department or just,
Before we decide as a board that we're gonna do an audit,
mhm.
we need to know if we even have the ability. An audit meeting, I remember last time there was like 100 or so line items of use of military supports, and if we were gonna pick a random sample like on the 10 of them. We would have to sift it up this records.
And I guess we don't know what was envisioned by the ordinance, if they just say review and make recommendations cancel.
I think I remember there was specific language. The type of review, there was, do you know, it was like something about.
Yeah, like demographics and the impact.
Which would make. Sample of it. Hold on. It's. I think scroll down more. Right there, right there, section 2.140, can you click on that? So we have to determine if it follows, if it's in compliance with these little bullet points. Can you scroll down?
Yeah.
Can't read this, what does it say?
I don't think it's this section yet.
Oh.
I forget, so. There you go, criteria, that's the section that's on there. I remember looking at this.
Safeguard public school.
So this is the criteria that we use for us and
Sorry.
I mean, the charter is pretty clear that we should be doing this. So.
Okay, I feel
You want
like
to read
we
it?
should move on, because we're supposed to be.
Please move it along.
I think I'm putting, it has to be done in 60 days, that's Q2. So, that's in the due date. What do we want next? Use of force. We want the annual letter suggestion.
Like staff to weigh into, takes a lot of.
And what else?
I think I would be worried that. We have already a lot of Q1 and Q2 deadlines, we don't have a Q4 deadline. I think this year we did it in Q4 or Q3 into Q4, right?
Yeah.
Just to do the outreach.
I don't know I obviously understand the importance of low scrutiny, but the annual review of it seems. Like but that's in the policy itself, but maybe it has to be policy revision. Just because this area of law and policy is very well regulated, I mean, there's a Supreme Court case already, and that could impact it, so. I don't know if an annual review is. It's over, it's, from my word, but if an annual review for use of force. Is necessary, given how closely scrutinized it is. Well, this is in the BPD policy. So that the annual review, but
Which
it's,
to our understanding was incorporated from previous conversations with the PRC, right? Because Mr. Perez Velez was involved with that.
So, yeah, I was wrong with that too.
Mhm.
So in the policy, it says that we shall.
convene the annual,
Mhm.
yeah.
Oh,
So what, I mean, if that's, we still feel like that's required or necessary, then yeah, but I'm just saying that. I don't know how much movement happens, and you have a very robust use of force policy, already, so. I don't know.
something came up though recently, I can't remember what it was, but I remember us thinking, oh, that should be in the sport policy. So it's probably, since we put it in the ordinance, it's a good idea to do it. It may not take very long, right? It could just be a.
Right.
Right. So yeah, I wouldn't put that in the order.
I think Q4 makes sense because it dovetails with our recommendation
Right.
for the notification system where. One of the recommendations is that the chief notify the board whenever there's a modification to the use of force policy. And if there has been no notification to changes to the use of force policy, then our review will be very cursory, as you're saying. And if there has, then we'll have actually an understanding of what's going on at the end of the year.
Looking for, clear.
The
Is there any?
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent.
Makes sense.
It's good.
Good.
great. I think we're getting better right now. Side chair open.
Oh, military good policy.
It's get confusing, all this different.
I know. So this one is one where we're supposed to do a community meeting or the department.
The
The
department.
And this hasn't been assigned to a subcommittee, this, right? No, right.
So why are we putting this under? Mandatory?
I think what's mandatory,
The
Oh.
policy itself, I think requires about.
Well, the comment says review not required under charter ordinance or state law, but has been instituted by practice.
Okay, yeah. That's what I get confused.
So if it's not, then we should take it out.
Okay.
But I think to, just I guess, point of clarity, the reason that we made it onto this list last time. Was because of that oversight aspect of it, where we made sure that, whether they had met the requirements for that community meeting.
Right.
So in that regard, again, it's not mandatory, but something that we should.
Just to help my understanding, could you give me like a broad description of the military equipment policy?
Yeah, so.
I haven't had a chance to.
So there's certain
Learn that, yeah.
equipment, primarily firearms, there's like the smoke grenade launchers.
Okay.
I forget the
I
exact
know
like,
Tear gas.
right, like flashbangs and stuff like that,
Okay.
that's considered military equipment in the
Assault
state.
rifle?
Right, assault rifles. The state requires that BPD report their usage every year, and that there's certain approval as to their continued use of it. Very similar to our controlled equipment, except Berkeley has slightly more detailed requirements. As to like the descriptions and the summaries, versus the military equipment reports more bare bones, it just documents the uses. Really without the summaries and things, it's more of the summary statistics.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
That might be that you guys have your own calendar of things, or it's something you do, like maybe you just check to make sure that they've done the community, whatever they have to do, but it's not like a full board activity, it's included in our calendar. Since it's not mandated.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I think to that matter, you said, we received a PRA request that said, where's the information about the community meeting, which didn't happen. But then we saw clarification, the department said by giving it to you guys, this is part of the community meeting, so I think that that's also how.
Oh, well, and where did that land? Because that's not, there need to be some clarity about what a community meeting.
Yeah, I reached out to, and I'll review to the city attorney when this happened in real time. But yeah, this is, well, James is still here, so I need to double check.
And how many outstanding requests are there to the city attorney? That'd be a good thing to track. You know, and I can
We have, I just don't have the number.
right, but maybe put in the, to let us know at a board meeting, and put in the annual report. You know, especially if we're talking about limited capacity of the city attorney's office and why we might need independent counsel. Is that, you know, for example, we have X number of outstanding requests. Something like that.
Yeah,
But this is one that would need some clarification. If we're supposed to, if that qualifies under the state law as community outreach or whatever.
So we're gonna take this off of here though.
Yeah.
Alright. And mutual aid, in our fourth month, iteration of the manual, this is not gonna be a requirement, okay.
great.
Are you sure that this captures everything?
You know, just feel like, well, let's look at that other list.
Yeah, I don't think infographic.
Well, so they're ongoing things that won't be in our calendar.
Yeah, my understanding is that there are other ones that are ad hoc.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Mhm.
Well, great.
And then let's put in the calendar, put annual retreat in. This time next year, might as well build it in.
Like I'm saying, get the bill of one to 30 each. Original thought. Yeah. I think it's, you wanna go to the next section
Mhm.
or the next, that's bullet.
Yeah, so we're already kind of in there.
Yeah.
So we were already in calendar for the activities. And then proposal consideration and activities. And we will coordinate the total. So I guess. So I guess this is,
But have we talked about discretionary activities? So, cause I think that starts on page 15, right?
Yeah, I guess what are we gonna do with,
Like, I'm getting to get to that. So last year, we chose to take on the budget review of the discretionary.
mhm,
And then I think that's not relevant this year then. Either budget.
It'll be relevant in four. Maybe early.
So start for next cycle.
Yeah, but they still do like the AO1 and AO2 budget reconciliation, so there might be budgetary after each department going forward, so. But with the full cycle review.
Okay. Well, let me not take these out of order, that should be on. So,
What do you, like, whatever they're gonna produce?
here, it would be good for us to decide what discretionary activities we want to do. And maybe it's just not that relevant, the first one is very broad. So I don't really know what it means.
and I think that's what's all under the 230, the second bullet, the focus for the activity. So that's kind of where I was thinking we'd be talking about that, so that.
Oh, okay, sorry, I thought we were doing that
I
now.
thought we were gonna.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, I thought she was talking about, the prior.
Oh, no, I'm on page 15.
No, I was looking at the agenda.
Okay.
The agenda, so the agenda, we had, calendar for mandated activities, we just did that.
Right.
230, so we're a little ahead of ourselves, and then the next bullet is proposal for discretionary activities. So that's where we.
Yeah.
So if we look at all the discretionary activities that we have, including now the MOU. Many of these don't make sense to put the frame up, do we want to do it? MOU review does. The budget review does.
And where's the list of our discretionary activities?
They at the packet. And interestingly, it says that our receipt and consideration of ODPA.
No, I don't know how that's, I just saw it right there, I was like, no, we called the history there.
Which number?
Number 3,
Missed them.
I thought we had to do.
Well, yeah, so we have to give it to you. So I think that might have been where the confusion and the lack of synergy in language.
I think we can just assume that it's mandatory. Ad hoc community.
Yeah, so the calendars only works if we know when things are happening, right? Other things are just ongoing answer that we're not gonna put in the calendar.
Alright, or you need discretionary ones. I don't see
Right.
anything on here that is calendarable.
No. But is there anyone on here that do you want to keep this up this year? Like the director just said, about it's gonna be budget mod.
I have a suggestion. Number 6 on this list, I think discretionary, I don't know if it's mandatory discretionary, but I think we should focus on these drags. After them through.
Yeah.
That's what I think 6 is under, right?
The rest the Julie word.
And I was honestly on that point, I was gonna bring stuff really good. I would love like a status update on the negotiations. I know that the purpose of like the subcommittee is to not burden the board with what you're specifically you're fighting over. But I think some visibility every now and then into what's going.
Well, I did tell the board that the two big things, like subpoena power and body on camera. And so you've got the memo that you sent.
Okay.
They haven't got back to us yet, and so the labor negotiator like, well, we'll deal with that later. So she's jumping over that, so we have, even though they said, yes, you got subpoena power. We haven't got that part of the regs because I don't know, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that number 6 there is really talking more about the standing rules than because the final regulations are mandatory.
The other one, the regulations have to do with the complaints.
Right, those are mandatory.
Okay.
And so we have the standing rules, we've already done that.
Right, but I think the vice chair is working on harmonizing everything along with me, to put the, because the standing rule should reflect all the other stuff, the operating, the procedures that will.
Oh, yeah, so that's a good
Yeah.
goal.
So maybe like, I don't know how we're gonna get any strategic priorities this year based on the list. Maybe we could invert the agenda items and talk about board members. Priorities of the year, and then that can help feed the discretionary activities decision.
I think that's a good idea. I just do think we should just make a quick decision on that.
Okay, sure.
Cause we did decide to do it last year.
I think if you're willing, if there's somebody else that's willing to do it, I would say. I know I don't have the capacity to do it, but yeah, we should be in.
I would say to be vigilant because a lot of stuff is happening in Washington that may or may not impact, or they may utilize the money differently and they're probably could be closed. Obviously.
So we'll take that one.
Yeah.
And so then I think it would be helpful if you modify our, however, the 2025. This is gonna be ultimately maybe like a combined calendar, mandatory and things we've chosen to like on. To put in the dates, that I should expect to get them. We'll do that together and we're better than that.
Yeah, I'm thinking Q3.
I don't know when they are. Yeah,
Yeah, good idea.
okay.
Okay, we good on that?
Mhm.
Okay, so let's invert the conversation and talk about individual board members. Goals for the year, and then maybe that can help inform also the tasks that we want to be. Taking on this year that are beyond the mandatory ones. Required by charter, so I think at the last meeting, I asked everyone to think about. The individual goal that they have related to the board's work that. They would like to work on this year, so I'm hoping that people thought about that and have an idea, even staff. Is welcome to participate in the conversation.
I can tell you for me, I just want to get the regulations done.
Mhm.
That's a huge goal. It's been a goal for years. We're making progress, but it's super slow. So that and body worn camera, I'd love to get those two things done. Well, and vehicle pursuits. So they're all in progress, but so for me, it's just getting those things done.
And like I said, for me, it's just, getting the ball rolling to where I'll be able to have a substantial report on policy 1010, 1031. I wanted to, and I also like to apologize earlier for the lack of clarification on, what exactly the policy entails. I can just read it briefly, if that would be helpful. For the first policy, 1010, the purpose and scope. This policy provides guidelines for the reporting, investigation, and disposition of complaints regarding the conduct of members of the BPD. Policy shall not apply to any questioning, counseling, instruction, informal, verbal admonishment, or other routine or unplanned contact of a member in the normal course of duty by a supervisor or any other member, nor shall this policy apply to a criminal investigation. And then the second policy, it establishes a process for the Berkeley Police Department to review complaints involving its employees. So, yeah, just that's one of my goals, as far as this year. In conjunction working with Chip.
So that sounds to me like an internal affairs policy, is that what that is?
Yeah, and you know, there's. And again, I don't wanna, I don't wanna answer that in opinion, I wanna answer that in fact based, cause I don't wanna. Say anything incorrect, but there's a difference between, as far as I understand, there's a difference between an administrative investigation and a criminal investigation. And internal affairs, in BPD. Typically handles the administrative investigations. Does that sound
Yes.
online? So, yeah, did that help answer your question?
Yeah.
I was just thinking, that under this section, these are things that we want, our goals for the next year. So it isn't necessarily, proposals for discretionary activities is one way to put it. But it's also, I think we had a good discussion early on about what we've done well and where our challenges are. So I think it might be helpful also to say, okay, well, we talked about challenges, say, or your a network, a brain trust network. So it'd be good to have, I think, at this, before we're done today, come up with a way to address some of those ideas that we had.
Yeah, I think it's the next session. Covering that, you're saying.
Yeah. But anyway, I think we weren't real specific about it, but it made it there.
Okay, I have one, it's complete, the operation policy meeting.
Staff?
I would like to get us up to full staffing again. I would like to.
Can you just say what is that exactly?
Right now, we have a vacancy in administrative assistant, and, we have a temporary person there, so we're in the process for permanent. And, I wanna make sure I'm being more aligned and sync with the new council and our new city manager, leadership, so we have a good relationship of establishing one with the city manager. He has 2 deputies interim basis right now, which I work with them. Sharon from the budget is one of the interim deputies. And Tasha is another interim deputy, so getting to know them more, then it's gonna be permanent one coming in, so just establishing that rapport for continuity. And just being more visible to our counterparts in City Hall. So they know that we're a resource, like even I think the Peter Radu item that's gonna go before you. At the next meeting, I think that's a good example of the respect that this body's getting. So it's a new acquisition for cameras at the animal behavior center.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So under the ordinance, you have the ability to review those kind of items, but in a world where this body is not known or not respected even, those kind of things will tend to just go straight to council, but now I think we're getting in that place where like, oh no, we're efforts in there. So, that I think is important for me, just making sure that we're in synergy with all of the city stakeholders. And continue to improve relationships with the police department and BPA.
I have 3 goals. The first is to fully implement an effective early intervention system. And I think that that work is beginning this week. And I'm planning on meeting with Arlo in the department sometime in the next 2 weeks to put the first steps in the motion for actual implementation, because we have now jumped through every single hoop we need for approval. The council has a finally approved it, and so we're gonna go forward with that.
And Arlo is who again?
Arlo is the head, what is his title? He's a long title now.
Yeah, he's yeah,
Data.
he's a data guy, but.
Okay.
Accountability and something.
Oh, that's right.
Was it the
Yeah.
OSPA?
Office
Of
of
s-
Strategic Planning and Accountability.
There we go.
He's the
Okay.
head of that division.
I see, okay.
Anyway,
Never-
He's a strategic planning and accountability manager because the spam director. So
Senior director. The entire purpose of what he does is he handles the data side of it
Okay,
and the technology. He runs the transparency. That's what his control.
oh, I see, okay.
And he's also leading this early intervention implementation. Because there's a lot of technical aspects to it. Which, happy to talk to you more about it if you're interested.
Yeah, be interesting. I think to learn more about about the early intervention. What's it gonna look like?
Yeah, I can give you like just a brief like intro and then talk about the other two goals, but essentially it's a system that will be able to identify risky patterns in before it becomes misconduct within the department as it pertains to specific officers. And the way it does that is it's the old systems were like random audits.
Yeah.
Where you just pick a an officer
Right.
and sort of do a QA of their record.
Yeah.
But now we have hired a contractor who has evidence-based sort of like system that will use the data, stop data, overtime data, and a lot of inputs in order to identify risk levels for specific officers. And allow the department to proactively address that. In addition to, it's not just about risk, but it's also like well, making sure that they're operating at full performance.
And Chief Lewis, did she talk about that a little bit?
She talked about it a lot, because it's like the big thing that they've agreed to with us in the last year. It's been a long process that started like a year ago. But happy to read you in.
No, that's good. No, that was good. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, no, it's all good. The second thing is I would love for this board to have a presence at NACL. We had a good presence last year. And I don't know if you want to present at NACL this year. But I feel like we have an opportunity to be, this is part of my like, it's not a plan, it's more of a like, I think that. It's like, I don't know what it is. The brain trust and NACL fit hand in hand where it comes to like being able to tap in and create a network. For us to draw on. So that's part of the thing. So if we have the dates for that, it'd be good to circulate those as early as possible. I have a very time intensive job, but I'm gonna let them know well in advance that that I'm planning on gonna be at least slightly out of the time. That's the second thing. The third thing is for the board's like staffing level. My goal is to have a full 9 members by the end of the year. And I've taken steps to ensure that, and some of those steps are ones that I think the full board, like everyone here could take. I'm reaching out to basically people in the network to identify people and to rate them to the members to have openings on this board right now. So we have like we have 3 openings, maybe 4. And I think filling those should be a priority. And it shouldn't be the case where we allow, in my opinion, the what happened last time, the previous mayor, where it went 4 years until a week before he left office, he appointed a member. I think that my goal is to get in front of this mayor very quickly and to sort of like ask her to
Be good, and this is what I was talking, getting into the next sections, about what we're gonna do. I think we should do that, and as a full board too, send a letter to.
some lists, yeah. Or like it's in my mind for something to propose.
Yeah, we should definitely.
There's a way to like do some type of outreach to like let the people know that their position's available. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, I think it's.
Right, because most people probably are unaware
Yeah,
that these positions are available. If more people would be aware, then they generate more interest.
I mean, I think it's a good point, yeah, to.
Maybe there's some type of outreach we could do, even if it's, flyers or anything.
Yeah.
Old school.
I like that idea.
It would be good to come out of this meeting is if we identify some things that we all agree on, and then agendize them, so, at our, whatever, 2 board meetings down the way, we can say, hey, this is what we decided at, retreat, and so. How should we do it? How should we go about getting more community awareness and getting the city council? So whatever we agree on, let's,
But since we don't have our social media report.
I mean, I think a lot of times these conversations happen behind, like one-on-one. I think if we start to talk about it, my thing is, I was talking to the vice chair about this, I said. You know, the department is really good, every time they come to report at our full board meeting, the first thing they talk about is their staff. And I think that the first thing that we should talk about is our staffing level. And getting that message out there that we as a board deserve to have a full cadre of commissioners, I mean. And I think it's like send the message for them.
It's right on the Helen County Budget Board, and we had this same issue several years ago, we had a 15-member.
It's a lot.
And we were very low, and so a handful of us were just in the Senate board, and so we made it a priority, and we sent a letter to the board of supervisors, and we also did like a one-page. Kind of a, not a one-page info thing to get people involved, and it was really, it worked, I mean, now we're finding it. But it was like, apply, this is what the time limit is, you can make a difference. So we could do something like that too, I'm not sure where we put it, but something that directly reaches out to members of the public and encourages them to apply. We need to encourage the city council to appoint people, and we need to encourage people to apply.
Don't we have a subcommittee, what's it called?
And I was engaged.
I don't think,
Who was
It's
on?
not check.
But
He's good at outreach, Chip's an outreach kind of guy.
He is, but he's.
I know.
So, I'm just thinking about. I don't know that this needs to be worth that. Definitely, but I'm always trying to. So
I could be the full board.
it can be the full board, but somebody has to drop the letter, right?
so let forward.
City council saying,
And just for historical purpose, former chair, or he did send a few letters without them, we will have, if you wanna revisit that.
Oh,
So some framework, it could be different, obviously, but I think one thing we need to overemphasize is, we can't be reactive here, because my biggest concern is if I give you a report and you're not informed, what does that mean for that personnel, you can't be here. So that's what I want, we haven't faced that issue yet, but we got critically low at one point, and it was trouble.
It would be good to bring your institutional knowledge to bear on that letter, so that we can talk about that historical.
the positions are posted online, right? Okay, they are currently.
No,
No,
but it gets weird when, for example, I think at one point we got to 4 members. And we were concerned because if even one person missed, it sort of impacts the majority.
Yeah, 2, 3.
Right. So,
so there's 2 stages, I think, for one, if you're not full for the regular meeting, and then if you got so overworked that you can't have a hearing panel, they those are my big concern.
So I imagine that at the next meeting. We're gonna have a review of our subcommittees, so the staffing within our own subcommittee levels. And then proceeding from that is a plan where we reach out to people. We send a letter to council simultaneously, and potentially we could begin to invite members of those through that response to our full meeting. And have them speak on the public and the record to express their interests. Following that engagement process, so we, a couple meetings, 2 meetings down, we then provide a list. We can talk individually to them, we provide a list to council of saying, these members of the public have attended our meetings. They've expressed interest, we have these vacancies, we have this need, please consider these people. I mean, like,
we actually did that too.
there you go, I think that. It would be at least somewhat more effective than what we're doing right.
We could be passive.
Yeah.
And is there a way to maybe ensure that what we send to council, they actually read it out loud, like during assemblies to like the public, like to where?
No, but we could go.
Right,
Yeah.
that's a little.
Put the pressure on them?
I will personally promise that if we write a letter and we think that they're not reading it, I will go and read it myself.
There we go.
And they give a little extra time when it's a commissioner than they do regular members.
Did I give you more time as the chair?
Yeah. And I'll give my time to you.
So I think so that's my promise to this board, if we can do that sort of work. I think that we should do that. In Q1. I think Q1 and Q2, I mean, like, I think that we need to get it. In this process for verification and background checks or whatever. And that's one way to get more attendance, I mean, we're killing so many people. We're like, knocking down so many goals at the same time.
Yeah, I think that was an excellent recommendation, because it really gets a real turn. And now you made me think of something, I forget, how long is the background check process
It's like freedom.
and everything, so. Yeah. Okay.
My mistake.
Right.
Something.
So it takes. So like board member Levin said, we need to get on this pretty quick.
Well, I sense enthusiasm from both of you, so at the next meeting. I'm sensing that we're gonna, when we do our subcommittee evaluation, part of this work is gonna, be evaluated, and I'm gonna turn to you guys and. Okay. Okay, so that was my final goal, for personal goal, and I think it sort of feeds into this discussion.
What do we want to do? What are our priorities?
Yeah, so, getting the PAB fully staffed. Finalizing our operations manual. We want to catalog. Or prioritize our existing inventory of policies. Right. And we want to. Take it down to them, right? Like. Some that are sitting with staff, we may have to take. I may have to.
Well, we should do a retrospective.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay, and like, see what we're gonna do with it.
Yeah.
Make profit.
I'll announce the Nickel dates few times, but I had it in real time. So it's October 26th or 30th, and it's in Minneapolis. We have actually a good break between your October meeting and your November meeting, so that might be a good getaway. If you like.
28 to 30.
Yeah, the 26th and the 30th. Yeah.
I mean, even if we had those three goals plus finishing the policy. Yeah, that's a lot. I mean,
It is a-
yeah, that's plenty.
Plus all the other work we have to do.
Right.
So I would be just an interest. Is that? Okay. No, I know, I feel good about where we're at.
Mhm.
And maybe we can just talk about for the last, maybe like next 30 minutes. 20 minutes, just definitive actions that we talked about, and we could get on the record. I think we need to vote on. That has come from listening right now, so let's just sort of brainstorm that for a second. The subcommittee thing, I think should be.
That one we could do Wednesday. We could do some of that on Wednesday.
I would love to.
Dinner?
There's a place to dinner, but I like to show up before it's paid.
There's 5 new business items. Mhm. What are they? There is the surveillance camera item. There's a presentation of the policy complaint report that you completed. We had a recap session for today.
If it's just a form.
Right. Then the procedure for BP to submit the policies. And the mutual aid agreement is something we have to.
Procedure.
Yeah. We sat them, we just worked it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, well, that's an important one.
Yeah, so it's those 5 items is new business.
We can keep that agenda item for. And that's what.
Which agenda?
The one about recap.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right. But we need to, in terms of action items, we need to review the subcommittees, we need to review all the inventory policies. That's at a meeting, then we know there's gonna be a letter from the council on the vacancies. And the council not, council really needs to get this stuff ready. And then
A flyer to the public about board vacancies. That's something maybe you can do, unless you're gonna just not do this.
but what are we gonna do with the flyer? We really need to get.
So quick update, we have a LinkedIn page that we have created, and we do have a meeting with, Dr. Nora Silver from, Cal, and then they potentially be a partner or point us in the right direction for, the vendor. And we do have some, organizational partners that last time we, indicated there were vacancies, they put that message out there to, Healthy Black Families is good, they put it on their calendar event, a PAB meeting.
It should be a big list, that would be.
Yeah, we have to.
Have, something to broader our horizons, like the League of Women Voters, or, just groups that we wouldn't naturally think of.
Right.
And I don't know what they would be, but, I think we need to broaden our.
I think Chip would be a very good place. I agree, and that we can send them that digital flyer.
Yeah.
Targeted that.
Maybe Brent would be another good resource.
That's a good idea.
They know how to do outreach, right? If you're trying to-
He does know what to do. And then we can show the council that we're doing.
Have we heard before that it's a lock of candidates?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
I think a large part of that is.
People do
being
know.
aware.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like people don't, yeah.
They just assume somebody's doing that, I'm glad somebody's doing it.
But I think we, as a board, will ask in that flyer for people to attend and state their interest in. Fit in on meetings. maybe
Right.
two.
Well, and let them know how much the time commitment is, and that it's virtual, because on the mental health advisory board, some people just thought that they could participate remotely. And so they were actually appointed by a board supervisor member, and then they left because it's like, you may not have to go to the meeting.
Yeah.
So, the flyer should make sure that that's in person, X number of in-person and subcommittee meetings and
Full-time job.
long nights.
I feel like with these, I don't particularly recall anything. Our discussion that needs an action item. Do you all have any? I'm trying to like draw out from. So good with where we're at.
Yeah, alliances without study groups, well, I guess that kind of comes under also where we distribute this flyer, but, and what you were talking about, but I think that's really important.
And I think it's one that is something that takes a little bit of time to develop kind of a strategy or game plan. So if we did have that engagement subcommittee, I would commit it to that. Yeah,
Let's.
So we have that,
Now,
but we don't really have that.
right, we don't have,
but yeah, exactly.
As well.
well, they're gonna do it.
Yeah.
It's,
On subcommittee. So it's we need to bring back the metrics revised and the policy review process revised. Right, and so at a meeting that's not too jam packed, so probably in March.
yeah, we're gonna discuss the vehicle pursuit policy the last meeting.
Yeah, so I think we gotta go to March for the metrics and the policy review.
In March, I do plan on Actually, maybe even at the next February, which would also coincide with the average stuff and bring it forth, resolution we could send to council about, making April 17th police accountability day. So like you can formally be recognized,
Ah.
that.
It will get,
Yeah, it's a resolution. Police accountability.
Flags.
My friends gave me a plaque.
nice.
Really?
Yeah. I'll send you guys a pic.
Do we have commendations built into our calendar? We don't.
It's on my mind. It's
No,
not
it
like,
shouldn't. The calendar, that's mandatory.
What's the last,
It had said like the last batch or the last thing we landed on.
cause that, there wasn't like a quarterly or what schedule?
We had decided, the conversation was quarterly that there would be a review.
and I think we can talk about this at the subcommittee, now, because I think that's part of the.
No, I'm saying it's part of the calendar.
Oh, it's
So
not.
it's quarterly. Well, the charter says we have to establish.
Yeah, we're gonna do it. I just.
I'm just saying, if you're building a calendar, we need to put commendations in, because it won't be in there with some huge stack of them. And it's like, oh yeah, we're supposed to do this, but if we could space it out and just build it into our calendar.
That's a question I think for the subcommittee. for this conference.
But you brought with
Brett's gone.
I know, which is again why I'm saying we should talk about it at the subcommittee.
I'm just talking about the calendar, I'm not talking about who's gonna do the work, I'm just saying. With the calendar, at least we all see what we've gotta do and when, so let's just put it in the calendar and then. We decide who's gonna do it.
Do we have a staff now?
Probably, I don't know.
Rusting was, what was the subcommittee? Yeah,
I'm gonna go.
2 quarters.
We should go.
Less than 50. It wasn't too many, there was only a handful each.
But even that, if you actually read them all, it takes time, so.
And it's on the high end too, to be fair, on my behalf. Yeah, it's a high end, it's less than 50, but I think 50 is even above that number, they're very like, it's.
I might. Assign 7 votes to each of us. So like, and then Brent would review and elevate and we would agree. Yeah. Might, I mean, we'll do it. We can already-
The other thing, I mean, it's staff at time for you guys to look through them and go, these are the ones that are the most significant. Just do the first.
Well, we don't treat them as significant, we just categorize them different. So like.
Right, these are the ones that,
Right.
whatever our factors are, yeah, let's need to. Yeah, because that would help. If you flag them that way.
I feel like we're in a good place.
I mean,
I'm not trying to end the meeting early, but I also feel like we've accomplished a lot. In a shorter amount of time, which has been great.
And so you guys did a very helpful thing last year, the recap.
Mhm.
So if you guys could do that again.
It isn't, you guys don't have to present it at the next. Meeting. Is that feasible? I don't know.
Mostly I mean, it was relatively light, so I think if the turnaround, no, we compared to the last time before that. So I think it was, it might be, yeah, to have something.
So it was agenda, you said the recap was agenda.
Yeah, that was,
Oh. Yeah, so especially just that action item, what do we only have like. Yeah.
yes, yeah.
It's easier to carry a lighter load on this.
Ah.
Okay, are there any other things? Action items that we- Before we,
Not to go right on, it, but just.
Throw it in there.
And just for us to just be mindful about the changing dynamics of the atmosphere. So, like, these are all great goals, But right now, we still don't know with the funding on the federal level, how that may or may not impact.
But how did that impact what our action items?
So there are some federal funding that goes to public safety. So if the police department has to change their operations, it may impact complaint volumes, it may impact, so there's, we just gotta be mindful about how to pivot, and be open to that reality. No, I know, I'm saying, but in terms of like,
No, I agree.
not being so rigid, like you said at the work plan, I'm gonna.
I felt, though, last year we did, oh, really? What do you think that we did, I mean, after last year's retreat, we had goals and we did great, so. Thanks for writing that. Okay,
I hear you though. The tenor has changed.
Are you guys, what do you guys, or when is supposed to be?
Oh, okay. How do I close the meeting?
is there public comment?
There's technically public comment as item number 5, but at this time, we don't have any physically or virtually present attendees. So we could go ahead and go towards adjournment with the motion in a second.
I know that we did.
So.
Hearing, seeing no objections, I'm going to adjourn this meeting.
Perfect. Let me just.
So you're wondering if they
One.